Who's the most popular politician on the left?
AOC? I don't know.
One of, but who's Bernie? Bernie is
Bernie, yeah.
Bernie is. I mean, he's not a capitalist.
No, he's not, and he's also not president.
He's not. But
never would be.
But neither is Mamdani.
No, but he will. Trust me, he will be featured in the campaign commercials.
But they're going to feature people. They boogeyman everybody.
Yeah, but you don't have to boogeyman him. He does it to himself.
But they'll do it regardless. Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, but
they make anybody into boogeyman.
It has.
I think it was
just have more weight when it's real. I mean, when you can really show it.
And on the other side, you have the guy running in New York, Mamdani, right? Okay, who's like a straight up communist. I mean, he is. He talks about, the things that communists say. I mean, he wants free grocery stores, free buses.
I want him to win.
You want him to win?
Yeah.
Bill Maher isn't easing up, not even a little. On Real Time with Bill Maher, the conversation quickly turns into a high-pressure showdown as he takes aim at Maimoni's sweeping socialist ideas. Free groceries, free transit, free education, the whole blueprint. But this isn't some calm back and forth. It's a calculated dismantling. Maher fires off sharp, rapid critiques, slicing through what he portrays as idealistic promises that don't hold up under scrutiny. Point by point, he keeps tightening the grip, leaving little room for rebuttal and turning the segment into a one-sided collision. If you're looking for a no-filter breakdown that ramps up fast and refuses to play nice, make sure you're locked in, because this one hits hard and doesn't slow down.
The New World Democrats must recognize that Zohran Mamdani is the future of the party. Unfortunately, it's the Republican Party. Get it? And if you missed his victory speech in last week's mayoral election in New York, don't worry. You'll see it in every attack ad for the next 2 years. Now, Mamdani seems like a nice guy, and I congratulate him on an extraordinary political achievement. But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, lady?
Bill Maher leans into a blunt warning Democrats ignore at their own peril. If the party gets carried away by the Mamdani buzz and lets its most hard-left voices set the tone heading toward the next presidential cycle, he frames it not as bold strategy, but a misstep waiting to happen. The rhetoric might fire up activists, dominate online spaces, and draw cheers from progressive circles. But beyond that core audience, the appeal starts to fade fast. Centrists grow cautious. Independents begin to distance themselves, and swing voters read it as a signal that the party is drifting too far. Once that perception takes hold, the contest risks tilting before it even fully begins. Turning a competitive race into an opening the opposition would be quick to seize.
At least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won. In districts, Trump also won. All moderates. This isn't rocket science. All the left-leaning think tanks have done autopsies on 2024, and they all came up with the same message: move to the center. Even the New York Times, which did so much to promote woke politics, now says the partisans are wrong. Moving to the center is the way to win.
Bill Maher isn't just speaking off instinct here. He's pointing to a pattern voters have already made visible. The signal coming off the map is clear and hard to ignore. People aren't chasing ideological extremes. They're leaning toward candidates who feel steady, relatable, and actually electable. The 2024 United States elections underscored that contrast. Donald Trump managed to carry key states, yet Democrats like Josh Stein, Tammy Baldwin, and Alyssa Slotkin held their ground in those same battlegrounds. That's not mixed messaging. It's targeted decision-making. Voters are drawing a firm boundary, showing they may still be open to Democrats, but not to candidates who come across like ideological manifestos or social media movements dressed up as campaigns. And that's the core risk Maher is calling out. Digital enthusiasm might be loud and intoxicating, but it doesn't translate to trust, wide appeal, or winning power. And that gap could decide everything.
Problem is, Gen Z thinks socialism's wired and capitalism's tired and billionaires are what's for dinner. And who can blame them? If you're 30 and still sharing a bathroom with roommates, capitalism isn't working for you. People will reject any economic system where there's strange hair on the soap. No one wants to be approaching middle age and still writing their name on food before they put it in the fridge. So they're quiet quitting capitalism and texting socialism that they're down to fuck. Thing is, socialism will fuck you. Because socialism, to put it simply, just doesn't work and has never worked.
Bill Maher doesn't soften the landing here. He zeroes in on an argument many on the left would rather sidestep. Socialism, he argues, can sound powerful when wrapped in the language of fairness, compassion, and equality. But history hasn't always matched that promise. Time and again, systems tied to socialism have offered dignity, yet run into dysfunction. Aim for justice, yet face shortages, and pledge stability only to struggle with long-term decline. That track record lingers in the public memory, and voters don't just ignore it. So when a label is openly embraced, a large segment of Americans doesn't hear innovation. They hear a warning sign they've seen before. And in the political arena, that perception becomes a powerful weapon, giving opponents an easy path to paint Democrats as reckless, overly radical, and disconnected from everyday reality.
Democrats, I read these, 74% are for democratic socialism. Only 16% favor capitalism. Is this going to be a country that I don't recognize in 5 to 10 years if we don't have these two pillars? If we don't, where are the Democrats going with this? If Mamdani is the face of the Democrats on the East Coast and Katie Porter is the face on the West Coast, I don't know if that's great politically for that party.
Bill Maher takes it beyond one voice and frames it as a warning about the party's direction. The shift toward more ideological and confrontational ideas can make Democrats look like they're moving from reform to risky overreach. In that space, figures like Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, and Gavin Newsom come off as more stable compared to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders. It all comes down to perception, working within the system versus appearing ready to upend it. And that's where many voters start to feel uneasy.
New York is New York. It's definitely it's the media capital, the financial capital. It is a bellwether like no other city is in this country. So don't tell me that who the mayor of New York is doesn't matter.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second. Do you think, let's say, on the seize the means of production, do you think the mayor, that one person, if he is a democratic socialist, do you think that he would have the power and influence to be able to, usher in socialism?
Some might ask whether one politician can really push things that far. But that question misses the bigger picture Bill Maher is getting at. Political change rarely happens in one dramatic swing. It builds slowly, piece by piece, through policies, appointments, and the narratives that get repeated over time. That's how ideas once seen as fringe start gaining ground, how rhetoric that felt extreme becomes familiar, and how the boundaries quietly shift. As more people within a party begin to accept those ideas, they don't stay controversial. They become easier to promote and harder to challenge. The real concern isn't a sudden transformation, but a gradual drift that keeps redefining what counts as normal until what once seemed radical starts to feel like common sense.
Definitely has the power and influence to elect J.D. Vance or whoever is the Republican candidate next time. It is a walking commercial for the Republican Party nationally. I think
the Republicans are going to...
When you let the Democrat socialists, and now they're actually calling themselves socialists, when you let them take over a major American city, this is what you get. the state-run grocery stores, which work so well in Cuba and the Soviet Union and Venezuela. Just bad ideas. And again, this ugly streak, streak of anti-Semitism.
Bill Maher frames it as less about ideology and more about political consequences, a scenario he sees as self-inflicted risk. In that view, the danger isn't just controversial policy, but the way it becomes an easy target in national messaging. If Democrats are publicly linked with socialism, opponents don't need complex arguments. The framing almost writes itself. Campaign ads, debate attacks, and sound bites can all converge around the idea of large-scale economic overhaul and expanded government control. Once that narrative settles in, it becomes difficult to undo, because public perception tends to stick even after the details fade.
Who's the most popular politician on the left?
AOC? I don't know.
One of, but who's Bernie? Bernie is Bernie is. I mean, he's not a capitalist.
No, he's not, and he's also not president.
He's not. But
never would be.
But neither is Mamdani.
No, but he will. Trust me, he will be featured in the campaign commercials.
But they're going to feature people. They boogeyman everybody.
Yeah, but you don't have to boogeyman him. He does it to himself.
But they'll do it regardless. Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Gavin Newsom. Yeah, but they make anybody as boogeyman. I think it was
just have more weight when it's real. I mean, when you can really show it.
Bill Maher argues that this is exactly where the political danger comes in, because it gives opponents an easy, ready-made message. Instead of needing to stretch or distort positions, Republicans can simply point to public statements, clips, and policies tied to socialism and build their case from there. In his view, that makes the strategy far more effective, since past attacks on figures like Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Nancy Pelosi often relied on interpretation. But here, the messaging is already built in, making it easier to turn into a powerful campaign narrative.
This must be horrible for a guy like you, who you spent your whole life talking about how government tries to do too much, which it does, and spends too much. And here you have Trump, who is the Republican, who is aggrandizing more power than anybody, as we just talked about. And on the other side, you have the guy running in New York, Mamdani, right? Okay, who's like a straight-up communist. I mean, he is. He talks about, the things that communists say. I mean, he wants free grocery stores, free buses.
I want him to win.
You want him to win?
Yeah. I think every 20 years or so.
Wait.
We need every 20 years or so, we need a conspicuous, confined experiment with socialism so we can crack it up again.
At some point, arguments stop being new and start sounding familiar again. Socialism, in the eyes of many voters, isn't an untouched experiment. It's a system that has been tried in different forms with mixed outcomes. Critics often point to issues like economic pressure, inefficiencies in governance, and restrictions on personal freedom in certain examples, while supporters argue those cases don't define the ideology as a whole. But in politics, perception usually matters more than theory. Rebranding or softening the language doesn't erase the historical debate around it, and that lingering memory is exactly why skepticism remains strong among many voters who feel they've heard similar promises before.
Socialist slogan used to be, workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. The new socialist slogan is, trust us, this time it won't be a mess. So, when the post-war Labour government in Britain was about to get started, one of their leading lights was a socialist named Nurian Bevan. He said, what could go wrong? He said, we have a nation bedded on coal, surrounded by fish. It would take an organizational genius to have a shortage of either. In 3 years, they had a shortage of both. That's socialism.
That's where it all comes together. Bill Maher is raising the concern from inside the same political space, which is exactly why his warning carries weight. His message is straightforward. If Democrats mistake online activist energy for broad national support, they could be setting themselves up for a serious political setback. The signals, in his view, are already visible in election patterns and voter behavior, showing a clear gap between enthusiasm in certain circles and appeal across the wider electorate. For him, the takeaway is simple. Winning requires more than excitement. It requires trust, moderation, and connection with everyday voters. And if that trust continues to erode, the consequences won't just be temporary losses, but deeper, longer-lasting damage to electoral strength. That's the full breakdown for today. If you're into raw political commentary and no-filter takes, you're in the right place at Unfiltered Agenda. New videos coming soon. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.